Bree Tomasel, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Lads, it's about bloody time.
It's so good, eh? So good.
So good to be here.
We're recording this 2 weeks before your book, Unapologetically Me, is released, but we have read it, and I won't speak on behalf of Seamus,
Please don't.
Bloody loved it. It's such a good read. Genuinely, I can't wait to talk about everything that's in it. But it's also incredibly revealing. You speak in the book a lot about your anxiety, and it's kind of where I wanted to start. Like, how was the anxiety levels and the thoughts of everyone reading about your life?
Oh, mate, first of all, thank you so much for saying that. And also thank you guys so much for being so supportive. Steve, you sent me a message, was it last week?
Yeah.
You were halfway through the book, and that meant everything to me because my anxiety has been at 100. Because it's quite an interesting thought where you've put down every piece of dirty laundry that you can think of into a book, and everyone's going to read it. So you sending through those words meant a lot to me and calmed my nerves a little bit. So I really appreciate that.
Cheers, Bree. That comes from previous guests, and I think it was Haley Holt, was like, just send the text. And I was reading the book and I was halfway through and I was like, fuck, this is so good. And I figured, because it's a pre-release that we're getting, not many people would have read it. And I was like, I bet she is so anxious about this going out, especially reading about your anxiety. So I was like, just send the text.
Yeah, it was the right move.
Yeah.
The right move for sure.
Well, I think we saw you maybe a couple of days later as well.
Yeah.
Afterwards. And that was, I don't know, like the hug almost felt like a... Oh. Yeah, a little bit, like you kind of sunk into it. Like, I can imagine. I mean, I've listened to a lot of stuff in the research for this, and I know there's some overlap between stuff that you've spoken about before and now stuff that you're putting in the book. But yeah, I guess when you condense it all into one piece of work, it could be quite overwhelming to think about.
Absolutely. But I just thought at the beginning of this process, there's no point in writing it unless I'm going to be completely honest. And I hope that's what I've done, and I just hope it helps some people.
Was the process quite draining? And we're going to talk about what's in it, but the actual process of sort of revisiting some of these memories, and I think you worked with a ghostwriter and talking about your shit and talking with family about some tough things from the past. Was that quite draining? Yeah,
shout out to Sophie Neville, my ghostwriter, absolute saint of a woman who I did pay her in therapy fees afterwards. The amount of times I cried in cafes, like I said, we need to start meeting somewhere else. I'm going to be banned from all these cafes. But yeah, it was so mentally draining because a lot of the stuff, and I feel like we as people are like this, where you bury a lot of things. And even if you've worked through them in the past, you then bury it again because it's just too hard to kind of bring those things up all the time. But I actually found it really cathartic as well. And I've gotten a lot out of the whole process, and it's forced upon a few conversations between family members that should have happened a long time ago and just other things like that. So it's been really rewarding as well, for sure.
Yeah, okay, we're going to talk about, we'll keep teasing the things. We're going to get to the things. But first, there might be some people listening that don't know Bree, and I think your appeal is how relatable you are, and it certainly comes across in the book. But the question I wanted to ask is, does your life feel like surreal? Like, you've got 1.5 million people following you on social media. You're the host of New Zealand's biggest TV show. You're one of the country's most popular radio hosts. Recently won an award for New Zealand TV Personality of the Year. But you're just Bree, right?
As an Australian.
Yeah, I know.
And you're just Bree. Like, does it just seem crazy?
I feel like I pinch myself all the time, and I'm like, how did I end up here? Why me? Like, I don't deserve any of this stuff. And I feel like some of the people around me will always reassure me, and they're like, you're exactly where you're meant to be. But imposter syndrome, which I do talk a little bit about in the book, is very real. Like, I don't really think I've taken it all in. And most of the time I'm so busy that I don't ever stop to be in the moment, which I need to learn to do more, I think.
Yeah, is that because you are incredibly busy and you've got this incredible work ethic, I think, as well, which you've picked up from your old man?
Yeah, you're spot on, Shay. I've never met anyone that's harder working than my father, and I saw that growing up. But yeah, I think so. I definitely need to learn to slow down a bit, I think. But I feel like with what I lack in natural talent, I make up in work ethic, and I just work my ass off. If I want something, and I've kind of learned that over my career, that, you know, I might not be the best or the most talented in the room, but I'll outwork anyone.
It's nice.
And we've spoken to a lot of people in your life, and that theme comes through. I'm actually going to read something from Ross Boss.
Did you talk to Ross
we spoke to
Boss?
everyone. He said, look, she works herself to the bone to some point, although she's really figured out a good balance now on when to stop. But she heads off and does a TV show, and then without complaint is coming back and voicing those TV shows, which is fucking hard. She's voicing all morning, writing scripts and stuff, comes into us and gives everything to the radio show. And now, as you know, writing a book, recording the audio for that book as well, which I think is really fucking hard. Then she'll get home and renovate her house, walk her dogs. She just doesn't stop. But everyone gets the same version of her, which I think is quite good. It's not like she burns it so hard that by the end of the day she's fucked and we get the bad version. It's the same all round.
Oh, that's really nice of Ross Boss.
Yeah, does that feel right? Like you are always kind of, and like you're working hard, but it's not, you know, too much?
Yeah, I feel like there is times where I burn myself out. I've gotten better over the years to realise that a burden when that happens, so I try not to get to that point. But with what Ross is saying, like with radio especially, it's always my number one. And there's just no way that I can give less than 110% in anything, which I feel like is a detriment to myself sometimes, because you'll always get my 110% no matter what. No matter how busy I am, no matter how tired, I'm always in there 110%. That's my only gear for sure.
Yeah, that's a good way to be.
What does a day, right now, what does a day in the life look like? Because CTI is on.
Yes.
You've got the book coming out.
Yep.
Sounds like you're voicing the audio version, which that must be a cathartic experience in itself as well. It's one thing to write, it's another thing to read it out loud in your own voice. It's
real hard, lads? Like I walked in there not really knowing what to expect, but put a person with ADHD in a little tiny room for 3 hours and you have to read out loud. That's my worst nightmare. And so it's been really difficult. I feel like it's set me over the edge a few times where I'm like, after an hour or so, I just get real tired. And you start to make mistakes, where it just brings back all this old trauma of sitting in a classroom, and reading out loud. But it's been so interesting. I always love adding a new skill to my repertoire. But yeah, at the moment, voicing episodes for CTI, then I'll go voice the book, then I'll do some prep work for the radio show, then I'll come and do a podcast with you guys, and I'm all over the shop. But I feel like I'm at my best when I'm my busiest, when I don't have too much time to think and just knuckle down and put in the work.
So this is only the third time we've met. We shared.
Is it really? I feel like I've known you guys for ages, eh?
We shared a very unsuccessful night at the casino after the radio and podcast awards. I think you guys were calling me Ryan all night.
I wasn't calling. I know who you are. I know exactly who you are.
You got in on the joke, and then the Ryan was born.
Well, I so confidently was calling you Ryan as well, and I've been actually sitting on something for a while that I was going to bring up.
Oh,
I was waiting for this podcast.
All right, what you got, Bree?
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah, so,
it's okay.
Look, can I just preface this with saying that the Radio Awards is where we all let it hang out and we get a little bit messy and we have a few drinks and this and that. I called you Ryan because I thought you were someone else.
Oh, okay.
Do you know who?
No, Ryan Bridges.
Ryan.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh, my wife has
amazing
tagged me in a Ryan Bridges meme as well.
Is amazing.
Okay.
I've been hanging on to that.
Social is going to blow up.
Oh, but not a bad compliment though.
Yeah,
Ryan Bridges,
take it.
good looking lad.
Yeah.
Good looking lad.
Okay, so you thought I was Ryan. You thought Shay was hanging out with Ryan Bridges
between 2 beers?
Well, I think I met you when you were on your own, and I just assumed because it was radio and he was getting into radio at the time, and I was like excited about it. I was like, oh, that's cool. He's coming over. And
some method research.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, here he is. Oh, he's good looking in person. And then when I saw you guys together, I was like, oh, fuck, that's not him.
Yeah, that is amazing. Thank you.
Well, that's good.
Thank you for sitting on that until now.
Thank you for your share, and thank you for your share too, Shay, because I was very surprised.
Yeah, let's embarrass someone else now.
I was very surprised to learn that your relationship with Seamus stretched back quite a bit further than that night.
Relationships are a real stretch. It's a very one-way situation until the podcast, the radio and podcast awards.
Yeah, because I didn't realise our relationship, went back further either.
Exactly. So for a little bit of background here, we recorded an episode with PJ from The Hits a few years ago.
This is shit.
Where we talked about some embarrassing DMs Seamus had sent her. And this was in his, what I'll call his pesting era.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And he's a different man now. And that was a different time. But I was very interested to hear that he'd been in your DMs from as far back as 15th of December 2017.
Is that how long ago it was?
Yeah, can I just add an extra layer of mortification to this?
Please.
So I volunteered this information to Stephen late yesterday afternoon,
right.
Sort of peeked my head around the laptop and went, just out of, would it interest you to know?
So sheepish. I feel like I need to tell you this, bro.
In cross-referencing the timing of the messages to you and to PJ.
Yes.
Same nights. Same exact.
So I'm not special.
Same exact night. Yeah, I've got a type, clearly.
Okay.
Clearly you do.
So I've written out the DMs.
I want to hear them.
Read them now.
I want to hear them. I think he double messaged me, didn't he?
Oh, it's worse.
Okay.
15th of December 2017. Seamus, what opportunity are you moving to New Zealand for? Asking for a friend.
That's nice.
No response.
That's nice.
No response.
Yeah.
There's no
3 months later,
sinister undertone there at
9th
all.
of February 2018. Seamus, hey. No response.
Just a hey.
4th of May 2018.
Gets worse.
Seamus, hey yo. No response. 28th of July 2018. Seamus.
I just want to die again.
Bree?
Question mark?
Just nothing.
Just nothing. Just my name.
So he's gone in five times. Four times.
Give me some.
And then the 7th of June 2024, after we met you at the Radio Awards. This is you now.
Okay.
Seamus! Finally, we are friends. Bloody lovely meeting you and Ryan last night. Aha. I just saw all your old messages. I feel very rude that I haven't replied. I'll reply now. It's a radio gig on ZM, moving in January.
Well, you finally got a reply.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And to add, I think deep down I knew that they were sitting in there, and we used to see you at NZME on the lobby floor, and I was way too scared to come up and introduce myself and say hi because of that.
Because I was avoiding you.
And I thought, okay, it's out.
But
it's out there.
That's a good host, offering yourself up like that. Well done.
I did say, actually, I'll add this as well. I did say when I spoke to your mum on Friday, I said, in a different world, Di, you could have been my mother-in-law.
Could have been.
Yeah. Wow.
She would have loved that.
She did.
Although, have you told...
No, it's not my story to tell.
Ryan.
It's my story to tell. I'll tell Ryan/Stephen. Seamus talked to my mother and sent me a lovely message afterwards, just being like, just spoke to your lovely mother. And we had a bit of a chat, and then Seamus was like, I think you should know that she did say I sounded very hot.
Her words, not mine.
Really?
It sounds like my mother, and this is where I'm going to throw her under the bus, is she did some research on you guys. She told you, eh?
Yeah.
So she knew what you look like.
She knew about Ryan.
I told her.
She goes, you're Sean, aren't you? And she goes, no, Seamus. You're Seamus, aren't you? And you do it with Ryan, Stephen. And I went, you've talked to Bree. I said, this is brilliant. You've spoken to Bree in prep, but she did do some research, did she?
She did some research, and she saw a couple of videos of you guys, so she knows exactly what you look like, and said that both of you were very good looking, and to say hello and give you guys a hug from her, typical my mother. Always. Oh, wow. She's happily married, but, you know.
She was also more interested in our episode with Stephen Price.
God, don't get us
And that
started.
sent us down a rabbit hole of, they play cards with Wayne Bennett? Your parents play cards with Wayne Bennett? The Dolphins, the rugby league?
Fun fact about Stephen Price, Shay's like childhood hero, and we did this episode with him, it meant so much.
This is just embarrassed Seamus episode.
And he bought his book in
episode.
to sign like he's bought yours in, and Steve wrote his name.
Seamus.
He wrote his name wrong. He spelled Seamus
and
wrong.
I was too shy
but he
to
was
say.
too embarrassed to say.
No.
Yeah, he's got Seamus.
Oh, bless
S-H-A-Y-M.
his heart.
Yeah.
Bless his heart. Yeah, obviously coming from Queensland, we're huge, huge rugby league fans. And, my mum saw you and she was like, God, Sam Thaiday looks good.
Yes.
Like you said to me last week,
Yeah.
shit, that was funny.
Yeah, it's good. Recycle my gags. They're okay.
Yeah,
you,
mate.
you can use that.
You know, I'll do that. I'll do that no matter what. I'll take credit.
Okay,
Right.
that's a good base. Now, this is going to be one of the hardest transitions that we're going to do in between DD's
Jesus.
history, but we're going to go into some stuff.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've ever spoken about this before. It's in the book, and it kind of lays the foundation for the anxiety that you've suffered through your life and a lot of stuff that's going on. But I was hoping you could tell us about what happened when you were 9 at your nan's house.
Yeah, when I and you did right, Steve. When I was 9, it kind of put my life on a different trajectory, I think. When I was 9, I was homesick from school and my mum and my brother and I went into town to visit my nan because she lived in Stanthorpe Township, so in the actual little town, and we lived on the outskirts out on a farm. But, yeah, went in there I think it was the day before Melbourne Cup actually, and I was sitting at the kitchen table and we were kind of, in a country town, never seen a bad thing happen, very kind of naive to anything bad happening in the world, really good childhood. And there was a knock at the door and my nan obviously got up to go answer it. And all I remember from that point is just hearing these voices that didn't sound familiar. And they pushed their way into the house with knives. And I realised at that point that something bad was happening. And if you've ever heard the saying, I was scared stiff, I feel like I really understand that saying because I just remember not being able to move my body at all. And these two guys I soon realised were there to hurt us and to take things from the house. And it was to this day the scariest thing that I've ever been through. And they held us up in that house for, I think it was about 10 minutes. While one of them ransacked the house and the other one kind of was getting very irate and angry at my mum, me and my nan. And it was just the moment that changed my life forever. And I truly believed I was going to die. And even like thinking about it now, like going back to that moment, I still remember what they smelt like. I remember, how I felt. I remember tears coming out of my eyes and not with no sound, like because I was just so scared to make a noise that I would be killed by these two guys. And I feel like writing this book and going through the process of writing this book, I've realised how much that moment has shaped different parts of me moving throughout my life and how it's something that, changed my brain forever and the way that I see the world. But also looking back on it now, I think I realise why my mum, my nan and I had such a close bond going through something like that. And there was one point where one of the guys said that he was going to take me as a 9-year-old. They were going to take me with them. And I remember my mum standing up and she was really calm and she looked at this guy and she was just like, take me. I will go with you. I'll do whatever you want. Just don't take my daughter. And I think we all kind of have this thought that our parents would die for us. But I saw that my mum really would, And I think it's a big reason as to why my mum and I have this deep, deep connection where I saw she would give her life for me, And it's such an important part of the book because, as you said, Steve, it was the catalyst to, that traumatic event they're then carried on in my life with anxiety and the way I deal with certain situations.
When you make the decision to write, when you get approached by the publisher to write a book, you obviously know that this is like a foundational story and it, like we say, shaped your life.
Yeah.
Was it an easy decision to put it in? Did you know you had to put it in, or was there any resistance to sort of revisiting that and talking to your mum about what happened?
Yeah, absolutely, because it wasn't just my story. Like my mum and my nan, who has passed since obviously that happened, it was also my mum's story, and I wanted to make sure that I'd talk to her and that she was okay with it. And she was so supportive, as my mum is, and she was like, it's a big part of your story, and I think it needs to be in the book. So she was just on board straight away. And that was one chapter that I did send to her before it went to print, because I wanted her to read it and make sure that she was comfortable with it and that she felt like it captured what happened there that day. And, yeah, she was nothing but supportive.
I asked her about it when we spoke, and I was audibly moved as you are now, kind of talking about it, and even trying to frame the right way to ask her about it, and it just brought it home, like the three generations of women being in that position at the time. And as she was answering, she did so, like it's your recollection from a 9-year-old girl's perspective, and that's really confronting to read, and that's as someone who's not directly related to you,
Totally.
Like I imagine her reading that as your mum, and I don't know whether you'd ever, like Stephen said, spoken to her about how that impacted you, or whether her reading the words was the first time to really understand the depth of effect that had on you.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think we didn't talk about it for a long, long time. It's only been in recent years where her and I have had a few more conversations about it, and me having this realization that she is just the most amazing mum in the whole world, where as a kid I didn't see how it affected her at all. Her goal was to make sure I was okay. She did everything for me, and in typical fashion kind of, neglected herself and her own mental health around what happened to us. And it's been really amazing talking to her and understanding that she has gone through a lot of the same things I've gone through since that day. And I've just felt a lot of guilt as well, like realizing that she put me before herself even after that day and continues to do that in her life. But yeah, it's quite an interesting one, and I feel like in the process of writing this book, I've learned a lot more about how it's affected her and the things she went through as well, yeah.
I think for what it's worth, she was also saying that as she's got older as well, she takes real solace in the fact that not just you, but your brother and sister as well are able to look after her and take her, and I think for everybody, as you get older in life, the roles sort of reverse a little bit, and you do start looking after your parents.
Yeah, totally. It was just last year I went on a Europe trip for the first time, and my parents were going, and so I tacked on a week where it was just me and my mum and dad, and we did Italy together. And there was this moment where we'd booked an Airbnb that was dodgy as fuck, and we couldn't get in, and this guy came down to let us in, and he was a bit scruffy and, not very welcoming, and it just sent my mum into a spiral. And in that moment I was like, oh, I know what is happening here, because I go through the same things, and I just popped her a Lorazzi and, just looked after her, because I was like, that was one of the first times where I've really seen her have a panic attack, because she's just hidden it so well. And in that moment, I just remember saying to her, I was like, it's okay, Mum, I understand. You can talk to me. And, yeah, it was quite a special moment. And the lorazepam did its job.
Yeah. You mentioned their panic attack, and that's something you talk about in the book as well, is that you started having panic attacks, after the invasion. But can you tell us about sort of how that developed? And because again, I feel like it's okay to ask you about it because
Absolutely.
it's in the book. But like you went to therapy and you tried that, but it didn't work. And at one point, you were just ready to put it in the rearview mirror and like, no, I'm just going to move on. But then, as you turned into an adult, the anxiety was still there. Can you tell us about how that sort of evolved?
Yeah, totally. I remember it was about 2 weeks after that home invasion, and obviously this was, in the late 90s. Where therapy wasn't, especially in country Queensland, therapy wasn't a thing, or like going to a counsellor wasn't the normal thing. And I remember my mum, like even looking back, she was like, I need to take this kid to someone to talk to about the things that have happened. And I can't remember how many times I went or, who that was that I talked to, but I remember her saying to me, you got in the car one day and you were like, I'm sick of talking about it. Don't want to talk about it anymore. I want to move on. And that was kind of it for therapy as a kid. And I feel like it was probably not the right decision because as I've grown up and gotten older, anxiety has reared its ugly head in many, many ways in my life. And it's been something that I have battled throughout my entire life since that day. Yeah.
Before you addressed it in the book, how often were you opening the door on it to either look at it or address it, or was it as easy as it in the rearview mirror? I know that's not easy, but is it?
Yeah.
How did it manifest itself as you progressed through your life?
Yeah, I think I definitely shut the door on it and didn't do the work that I probably should have, and still haven't, to be honest. And in the process of writing this book, I think there's a lot more work I need to do. But it would manifest itself in ways where I just have this intense fear of dying, and that can be set off by the tiniest thing and just cause me to spiral. And throughout my 20s and my early 30s, I've had 2 mental breakdowns, which I talk about in the book, where I truly, truly believe I'm going to die. And I know it stems back from that traumatic event in my childhood. And it's something that I'm terrified all the time that'll happen again. I've been to many therapists over the years to talk to about things, but I've never found that right fit. So I'm still on that journey of finding that right person, because I know, there's work to be done for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting with such a public-facing profile and huge platform like yours, when you do talk about it, and I know you talked about it on air and you got an overwhelming response, right? Saying, I'm struggling, this is me, being real about your anxiety. And what was the feedback like on that?
Oh, and even touching back on that when I did talk about it, I feel like I literally just touched the surface of what was really going on, because I feel like I kind of filtered it a little bit because it was I was in a really dark place. But even just touching on that and opening up on air, I was so overwhelmed, like hundreds, thousands of messages from people who pretty much were like, I feel the exact same way, and I feel like it was at a time where everyone's mental health was really on the decline. Like I feel like that was the real, issue, not COVID. That was the pandemic in my eyes, this mental health pandemic that had been created by what everyone was going through and what the world was going through. But in a way, like receiving all these messages and all these people who were like, I'm struggling, I feel the same, because my whole goal was to make people feel less alone and like they were not the only ones, but in turn it made me feel the same as well. And that's something that social media is amazing for. There's good things about social media, and connecting with people is one of them.
That shit's so powerful, eh? When like your kind of persona, and I know there've been other parts of your broadcasting career where you talked about stuff, but for the most part, it's kind of like fun Bree and there's gags and it's like funny, jokes with your mum and fart jokes and things. And so for you to just be real and like let the filter down, fuck, it's so strong.
I feel like it's way more impactful because people are kind of like, wait a second, like I didn't realize that. And I feel like it's so often than not, it's something we don't realize someone's struggling through, and it's always a silent struggle. So I think you're dead right. Even though it was very difficult, because normally, I mean, I cover everything with humor. That's just, what people do, especially me. Like, that's a big part of my personality. Like, even, in awkward situations, I'll like cover it with humor, or, if someone says something nice to me, I'll cover it with humor just because that's my go-to and my safe space. So to do something like that on air where there wasn't a gag at the end, there wasn't a joke, this is just me being real. Was something I'm really proud of looking back on it.
But I think to Stephen's point about your relatability, I feel like that translates into real life. That when you I think when people see you, it's like their mate that's cracked it.
Yeah,
that's made it.
And that's such a nice way to look at it.
But do you know what I mean? And then when your mate that's cracked it admits, oh fuck, I'm battling a little bit here. Everybody goes, oh fucking hell. I don't
want that.
I didn't realise that. Like, it's a statement, not a question, but it's kind of, was rattling around in my head.
I think you're dead right. And that's how I feel all the time, is that I'm just someone's mate who happened to slink my way into radio and on TV. And I feel like that's why I truly feel like that person that's kind of broken through and kind of like, hey, guys, they've let me on TV. I can't believe it either, guys. I can't believe it. And watch this. I'll say something outrageous. Yeah. And I really do feel like that. The community that follows me online, I truly feel like is this amazing, as weird as it sounds, like family that we've kind of grown up together. And it's really cool. Like, that's something I really, really do love about that world. Yeah.
The other really powerful theme in the book is your sexuality journey and coming out. And this was the other time I sent you a message. I was parked at the supermarket and I was reading the book and I had tears in my eyes because you detail, you came out to your mum, but not to your dad for too long, 10 years, about a decade. And then it was a trip back home with your girlfriend, who I think you'd sort of introduced as your friend.
Yep.
And at the end of the 2 weeks or however long you were there, it was your dad kind of pulled you into the corridor and had a conversation with you.
Yeah.
And you speak about how it's one of your great regrets that you didn't tell him earlier. But can you tell us about the dynamic with your dad and why it took so long?
Totally. So my dad is Italian. His family migrated over to Australia in the 50s to have a better life because Italy was so poverty-stricken in those days from the war. And so my dad's first language was Italian. He grew up in a very Catholic Italian family. So church, religion, Catholicism was a huge thing and still is in my dad's life. So growing up, we went to church every Saturday night. Like, that was a huge thing. And if you know anything about the Catholic Church and religion, is that, gay people are wrong and they're bad and they're going to go to hell. That's what I learnt growing up my entire life, and what my dad learnt growing up his entire life to this day, where he still goes to that church. So when I was first dating a woman and I was 21, I was a kid, and my partner at the time, who had very young parents, like she had very young parents. I think they had her when she was 18, were very accepting, very, forward thinking, and they knew all about her and I, and they were kind of like second parents to me. And she started pressuring me a little bit because we had been dating for a fair while and we were living together. And she was like, you need to tell your parents, And I remember avoiding it for a long time, and it was the cause of quite a few arguments in our relationship. And eventually I caved and I text my mum. What a coward. Text her, and she called me straight away, and I was like, oh God, I'm dreading this. And my mum just asked all these questions at once and it overwhelmed me. And I was like, I don't really want to talk about this. But I remember, because she came down and saw me, because I was living in Brisbane, and she came and saw me and we talked about it in person for the first time. And the one thing I asked her was, can you keep it a secret from Dad? And like you said before, Steve, it's definitely, I think, my biggest regret in life saying that. But looking back, I was young and I was scared and I didn't know how he was going to react, or if it was going to change how he felt about me, or if he was going to treat me differently. Like, I truly didn't know. And my mum promised to keep that secret, and she did for nearly a decade in a marriage where they don't have secrets. So, you know, it's just another thing where I'm like, it showed her loyalty to me, like where she put me first. And sometimes I really wish she didn't and she had told him a lot earlier. But hindsight's a funny thing, isn't it?
And is that one of the motivations for the book as well? So that people avoid that feeling of guilt and regret for not being who they are?
You're so spot on, Shay. This book is for, people who are scared to live completely authentically as themselves, whatever that looks like. This book is for those people. Because if there's one thing that I can say is that secrets breed shame, you know, and it might feel like the easiest way at the time, but it's going to cause lasting damage for a lot longer, in my opinion. So if I can encourage even one person to just be like, just try and find the courage to attack it head on, then that's the best way forward.
And without giving tips away on how not to behave, how elaborate was your cover-up regime from your dad?
It was pretty elaborate. Like, I think it got sloppy. Like in the end, you know, got a bit sloppy towards the end because I feel like didn't give a shit towards the end. I just really wanted it to be out in the open. So I did get sloppy towards the end, but
sloppy by like broadcasting it to hundreds of thousands of people on the radio.
Yeah, I mean, I did say sloppy, didn't I?
Because that was the dynamic at play, right? You were openly out, not making a big deal of it, but openly out on radio in New Zealand. Your mum listens every day. Mm-hmm. She would have it on, and your dad was often out on the farm, but every now and then he might be in the house when you're talking about it.
Absolutely. So, it did get sloppy. I did say that.
You did.
Because, I feel like, I just wanted to be done. I was exhausted. Like, I really was. I remember it was the Christmas before my dad and I talked about it, before my girlfriend came to stay, and I was there for Christmas, and here's my brother with his girlfriend and my sister with her husband, and I'm giving out the presents to everyone, and everyone's just having this amazing, you know, Christmas day. And I remember after giving out the presents, I went to my room and I just cried, and my mum came into the room and she was kind of like, she knew exactly what was going on, and she goes, "This needs to stop." And it really did. I was at my wit's end for sure. I was done with keeping a secret for sure.
And then that moment I talked about when he finally did pull you aside, and how's the dynamic after that? What's that like in that moment?
Oh, I just remember knowing, as soon as I looked at his face, I just remember thinking, I know exactly what's about to happen. And it was one of the most special moments I think I'll ever have with my father. It makes me emotional now thinking about it, where he just pulled me out into the hallway and said all the things I had just wanted to hear for 10 years, and said it so beautifully and so genuinely. And I could tell he said it with ease, like, you know, and it was so special where he just reassured me and said, you know, I'm so proud of you and I love you for who you are. And it's just something where, you know, I'd wanted to hear that for so long. And both of us were so emotional. And if you can picture my dad, Big Steve, we call him, he's got the biggest mustache ever, you know, farmer from Queensland, you know, big burly dude, and he was so emotional. And I could just tell he truly meant it.
Because there will be a proportion of our audience that kind of thinks, oh, no big deal.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
And I don't want to dismiss it.
No,
but
absolutely.
Can you paint a picture a little bit of where your hometown is, to kind of give us an understanding of why it might have been such a big deal for you? I know you've spoken about the religious element to it, but I guess role modeling is kind of what I'm asking. Like, was there any in your town at all?
I don't think I even knew what a gay person was really, like, till I was in my teenage years. Like I'd never met a gay person until probably, well into my teenage years. Never saw gay people on TV. Like there wasn't representation in the 90s and the 2000s really. So growing up in a small country, rural town, I just knew the only thing I knew about these people were the slurs that people would use to describe them. And they were used in my house, as I talk about in the book, like my dad using the word poofta or faggot to describe bad things. It was only ever a bad thing. And that's what I'd heard for so many years, you know. So there wasn't a role model. There wasn't representation. I didn't even really, like when I started to have these feelings, I didn't really even know what was going on because I just hadn't seen it. So it's quite a, weird thing to think about now. Like even when I was like having my first experiences with women and stuff, it always felt completely naturally to me because I was just acting on something that felt completely normal. And it was only from society and stuff I'd heard from other people that made me feel shame or made me feel like it was wrong. But it never felt wrong to me.
Has your dad read the book?
I don't know if he's read the whole thing.
Do you think he will? Like, how do you feel? How do you think about your dad reading it?
I think there's some stuff that he might be shocked by. But he's been super supportive throughout this whole process where I've called him and warned him, hey, I'm going to talk about these things like words you used in our household or things like that. And he said to me, he goes, I did use those words and that is your truth and it has to be in the book. He said, but I hope you do convey also that I have grown and learnt a lot as a person, you know? And I feel like I do cover that in the book, how much he has grown and evolved as a human being. But there's definitely things that I think will be really hard for him to read that he hasn't really realised was going on, you know? And I think he'll be devastated by it, to be honest.
I think as well in the book you talk about having an exchange with another parent here in New Zealand who had maybe been struggling with the same thing. I think her daughter was part of the queer community and she didn't know how to kind of address it, which is just another audience for this messaging as well. Because we've all probably got people in our families that are part of the rainbow community that are not comfortable at the moment to come out and talk about it. So it's a help for those to deal with sounds like it's a really bad thing, but to work, you know, to understand a little bit better the other perspective.
You're so spot on, Shay, and that was a big goal of mine in this book to cover that strained relationship with my dad and I, as hard and as raw as it is, because it's very confronting and very vulnerable, and it's not just me in it, it's also my dad who, you know, I wanted to make sure he was comfortable with it. But that was a huge goal of mine, is to help, people who are struggling with maybe someone who is, you know, come out to them and they haven't handled it in the best way or they don't know how. So hopefully it helps those people.
Yeah, I think it's powerful and captivating is what I said. It is. It's so good. I can't wait for the listeners to read it.
Can I pause for a second?
Yeah, go on, man.
Are you reading the book in the supermarket car park? Like you can't put it down?
Yeah, that's right.
Had you finished doing the shopping? Or
no, I hadn't gone in for shopping. I hadn't gone in for shopping yet.
Okay.
I told him to head to the cheese aisle for comfort.
Yeah. So you've you've pulled into the supermarket.
I had a bit of time. I
parked.
had a 30-minute window before I needed to be where I was going to be, and I knew that my shopping was going to take me 10 to 15 minutes.
I just it jumped out at me.
I mean, if that's not a great ad for the book, I don't know what is, you know? Just
clip that out.
Clip that out. For sure.
Okay, so as this is kind of happening in the background, what we've spoken about, at the same time you start blowing up on social media. Yeah. And it's around Mumma Die. And it's like, I actually went through a deep rabbit hole of
He
your
did.
Instagram.
Oh, no.
And I went right back to the start. And it's amazing because you've got like hundreds of thousands of followers now and there's just like so many views. But right back at the start, it's kind of just everyone's feed and there's like 2 likes and no comments. And it's just like,
That was me.
you know, consistent.
I feel
Seamus was one of them.
I feel
yeah.
like we missed that part. That's why in 2017, before you were even in New Zealand, that I was messaging, because at that stage I was living in Papua New Guinea. I used to come through Brisbane a lot, and I wonder whether the algorithm just picked up
Threw me into your feed.
this person that was putting out this content of farting, and it was like just like a person that you knew in your family that just didn't give a shit and would put their stuff out for everyone to kind of laugh at. Is that how it felt?
I literally, because people always ask me, they're like, oh, is this set up or is it, and I'm completely dumbfounded how they can't realize that it's not set up. That's literally been my relationship with my mum my entire life. And this one Christmas, I remember I filmed it over, Christmas holidays, where I was like, I'm just going to film, the dynamic of my mum and I and how we actually are. And I put it up online and it just blew up. Like, people just love her. And I'm just riding on those coattails all the way to the end. Yeah. But I think people just like to see, I think people also, really like a different kind of daughter-mother dynamic, where people kind of probably see that dynamic as one thing. Whereas I think my mum's and my relationship showcases a different sort of relationship where we're actually really good mates.
Yeah.
And we can give each other stick and have fun and be inappropriate, and I think people really connect with that.
For listeners who aren't aware of what we're talking about, the general theme of these videos is you telling like a rude joke or something to your mum and her saying, Brianna!
Oh, Brianna!
Oh, Brianna! And so one day you put like a compilation of these together, right?
Yeah.
And then it goes crazy. And it's like, is it like 1 million views in 24 hours? And is that kind of the start of the snowball?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember posting that. I didn't even look at it. I just kind of, because I'd been creating content for maybe a couple of years, just stuff that I found funny that I couldn't really do on radio. And I just post videos and they'd get a couple of thousand views and, it was kind of an outlet for me. And so I posted that video and one afternoon, and I didn't look at it till like the next morning after I'd finished, because I was doing breakfast radio at the time. And I remember looking at it and being like, I looked at it again and I was like, I thought it was 1,000 views. And then when I looked at it again, I was like, oh, it's 1 million views. I was like, what the fuck is going on? And it just kept going. And I think that video is somewhere up around like 20 million views or something these days, but it's just ridiculous.
So how's that working in parallel with your radio career? Because you've sort of been grafting away for 5 or 6 years,
yes.
And then you kind of get on the mic. And is the socials blowing up at the same time as you become a host of the regional radio show?
It was after. Like, I think I'd moved to the Central Coast, which isn't a big place outside of Sydney, and I was lonely. Like, it's hard making friends as an adult. Like, it's weird. Like, where do you make friends other than work? And I think I ended up joining a sporting team because I was just so lonely. I was like, how do I make friends? It's weird to go up to someone in a bar.
Start a podcast.
Yeah, well, start a podcast. And so, I feel like I was making videos to kind of pass the time, and it was getting me more noticed because I felt like in Australian radio it happens so often where you have these people slogging it out in regional or provincial markets that never kind of get a shot at anything bigger because they end up just hiring a social media person or like someone that's on The Bachelor, that happens so often in Aussie radio. And I remember once I started to get traction, I was like, oh, this might be good for me, but that wasn't ever the goal in the beginning. It was just to have fun. Yeah.
We spoke with Ross Boss and Dean Buchanan in the prep for this about how hard it was to get you from Australia over to New Zealand and ZM.
Uh-huh.
And I think Ross's line is like he's never worked so hard to get a woman to do anything in his life.
anything in his life.
Yeah, he chased me for months.
Yeah, can you take us to that last year in Australia and when ZM came knocking and where your career was at and how hard of a decision that was?
Yeah, I remember just done the breakfast show and I walked to my car and I got this number and it was a New Zealand number. I was like, who the fuck is calling me from New Zealand?
Sorry about that.
I was like, that Seamus guy just won't stop.
He's gone really hard.
He's just after me, isn't he? So once I talked to Seamus, I ended up getting this phone call and I picked it up and I can't remember who it was, whether it was Craig Bruce, who was like a big time guy in Australian radio. Everyone knows who that is. And he consults for NZME now. And I think Dean Buchanan had asked Craig to give me a call because he knew that I would know who that is. And I was like, what the fuck? How does Craig Bruce know who I am? And he kind of said to me, he's like, hey, we want to talk to you about coming over and doing Drive in New Zealand. And it was funny because I knew the Drive show on ZM. I knew Jason PJ. I loved their content. I thought they were a great show. And we'd actually been on their show a couple of months beforehand when they were doing their 48-hour marathon or whatever it was. And we ended up, broadcasting into their show and doing a crossover because Gaundy and I, who I was doing the show with, we loved their show so much. So I knew exactly what they were talking about. And I was like, what is happening? And then it was just multiple phone calls of me being like, I'm so flattered, but I'm good here. And I was so terrified, I think, of taking a risk and losing, the years of grind and hard work that it had taken to get to the point where I was in Aussie radio, that I just said no so many times and they'd just come back with a better deal and they'd come back with more things. And it wasn't until they sent in the big guns, Jace Hawkins, who I listened to growing up on Brisbane radio and just admired so much. And I remember him calling me and being like, this is the right decision. You need to do it. And that was it. After the phone call with him, they got it right because I was like, shit, I need to do it. Mm. And I have to say it's the best decision I ever made in my career, for sure.
But you'd just signed a contract in Australia, right? So to get out of that, a 3-year contract, which added another element to it.
Yeah, I literally had signed it the day before. After a lot, I must say, I told my boss I don't want to sign this, and I told him what was going on. I was really honest, which is probably a bad decision from me, but that's who I am. I'm just openly honest about most things. And so he'd pressured me for days and days until he stood over me at my desk and I signed this contract, because he'd said to me, he's like, oh, sign it, and then if you need to get out of it in a couple of weeks, it's not going to be a big deal. That was a fucking lie, wasn't it?
How big a deal was it to get out of it?
It pissed a lot of people off. And I remember calling the big boss. So not my direct boss, but the big boss, and telling him and being honest. And he said to me, you'll never work for this company again. You'll never work in Australian radio again. And I just remember feeling, because that's a scary fucking thing to say to someone, right? And I just remember thinking, you need to own your decision. And I knew in that moment I'd made the right decision. And it's so funny because I talk about in the book, I saw that guy like 3 years later at backstage at a Peking Duck concert, and he comes up to me and he goes, I owe you an apology. And it was amazing. Like he was so like, he just owned it completely and was like, I was wrong. He goes, you made the right decision, and it's been amazing to watch you have the success that you've had. And I really, I really appreciated that, because it takes a big person to come up and just completely say you were wrong.
Talk us through the chase though. Was it a 6-month chase?
Yeah, I think it was about a 6-month chase. And I was like...
But is it more than just phone calls? Like, are people not doorstepping you, but are they coming to like, hey, let's go and have a lunch? And
must make you feel pretty good though when you're getting chased so hard.
Absolutely, because it's not something that happens in radio. Like, it's really unusual, Like, well, for me it is. Like, and they were just so sure. Like, that's how I felt whenever they talked to me. They were so sure. And they never made me feel like there was someone else they were going up. It was me. That's who they wanted, and they wouldn't stop until they got me. And I remember they flew me out to Auckland to, kind of wine and dine me. And they put me up at Sky City in this amazing room, and then they took me to the grill, and then, all these amazing things. And then I realized once I got here, that's not how it is. I was like, now I'm going to Denny's and,
It's so funny hearing the other side, because I spoke to Dean and he was like, yeah, when she said no, that just meant that was the beginning of our negotiations. And Ross spoke about like playing one of your old Instagram reels with like you in the Uber to like a room of people and say like this is all going on in another country to try to get you, Bree, to come over and be there.
Yeah.
Like, bizarre.
So weird.
Yeah.
That sounds like Dean Buchanan.
Yeah.
But what was your knowledge of New Zealand outside of Jason PJ? Did you have any preconceptions or have any idea of what it might be like?
I'd been to New Zealand quite a few times. I'd played a few softball tournaments in New Zealand, and I knew that the Kiwis were bloody good at softball. Like, they're real good, real tenacious. And then in like literally the years leading up to this offer, my family had holidayed, I think 2 years in a row in Queenstown. And I remember the first time I ever got off the plane in Queenstown, I was like, holy shit, this exists this close to Australia? It's like, this is ridiculous. So I knew bits and pieces, but in terms of like the Kiwis, I knew there's this rivalry between the Kiwis and the Aussies, but I thought it was super lighthearted and it's banter and it's fun, which, I mean, mostly it is. But when I got here, I was like, oh, some people really hate us, eh? Yeah. So that was quite confronting, like being like, okay, so my job is to get people to like me and listen to the show, and some are going to hate me because of my accent. I've got my work cut out for me, big time.
There's a really interesting detail. We spoke to Clint in the build up to this, and the dynamic was that he had like 6 months of gardening leave, right? So you came over, but you're not on the air and you're kind of just like a bit of a spare part trying to like make connections. And I love this about radio because my impression was that, you just turn up for the first show and you kind of just like figure it out and see if there's chemistry. But you guys did 6 weeks of shows that didn't go to air just to get everything streamlined 5 days a week for 6 weeks. Like, incredible.
Yeah, just absolute radio gold that will never be heard by the world. We had the luxury of doing that. Some radio shows don't get that. But we did so many practice shows. And it felt like you're putting in all this work that was for nothing, but it was for something, obviously, to give us that connection and chemistry on our first day, which I feel like we had. So it definitely worked. Yeah,
because they're reasonably big shoes to fill as well. And I guess
reasonably big. People love Jason PJ.
Yeah, so like the feeling of the audience would be like, well, who's like, is that what you were thinking in your mind? Like, people are going to go, who the fuck are these two? And who do they think you are? Because he's got a profile in New Zealand.
Yep.
I think people recognised you when you came over for that wine and dine.
Or maybe, 1 or 2, because I'd had a few videos that had gone pretty big around the time. So a few people recognised me. Yeah, they were like, what are you doing here? And then they're like, what are you hanging out with Clint from The Edge for? Yeah, it was quite weird. But I was very aware at how big the job was. And I remember they said to us, it made us realize even more that we had our work cut out for us, because when we first started, because Jason PJ were on the air in Melbourne, and for I think maybe 4 months maybe, they were cutting up a highlight show of Jason PJ from Melbourne and putting it on between the 3 and 4 o'clock hour, and then we would come on at 4 o'clock to soften the blow. So we were like, oh shit, okay, this is not going to be easy. So we realised that it was big shoes to fill.
Because that's the weird thing about radio, is they're arranged marriages.
Yeah.
Like, they go, we like this person and we like this person. Now you guys got to work together.
Yeah.
So did you like instantly hit it off with Clint?
We met, so weird, and I feel like in radio this happens a lot. We met in a secret meeting in a hotel room in Sydney.
The QT.
The QT.
Not so secret.
With Craig Bruce. Everyone knows
Yeah, with Craig Bruce. It was the weirdest threesome I've ever been a part of.
He just sat in the bed and watched while we spoke in the cut chair.
He did nothing.
The cut chair finally got used
Finally.
while we did voice breaks for 3 hours.
Yeah, I was like, whatever you're into, Craig. Strange.
Oh, dear.
But yeah, and I feel like he's going to hate that.
The cut chair is good.
I just remember him sitting back, in the shadows. I think, we did. I feel like we had a good connection, but chemistry and that kind of thing takes time, So you're always anxious and nervous because, like you said, you just get put with someone. They're like, we think these two people would be great together, but you don't know. We don't fucking know. So I knew that I remember asking him certain questions to see what his views would be, like some deeper questions, just so I knew that we'd connect on certain things, because I think if you have that at the base, then you're good to go. Like who he's voting for and how he feels about gay marriage, just stuff like that.
Did you really? Did your sexuality come up at all?
No. And Ross will tell you this as well. Ross didn't realise until he picked me up from the airport when I was moving over here. Yeah. That's when he realised, because my girlfriend came with me and he's like, oh, and I could see the look on his face and I was like, oh, well, he knows now.
His retelling's slightly different.
Really?
Yeah.
What does he say?
His retelling is he knew for you when you first introduced her that you had some apprehension about it, like, I'm dumping this on you now.
For sure.
Whereas in his mind, your sexuality didn't even come into whatever you were going to be on the radio. It was just part of who you were as a package, which I don't know whether that's accurate now or not.
No, that is accurate. That is absolutely accurate. And I remember Ross has been the first boss that I've had where he has made me feel completely comfortable and that I can be whoever I want to be and completely be myself. And he's always supported that. And he's like, you share what you want to share, you do what you want to do, and I've got your back. And that's been an amazing thing because it's not always the case. It wasn't always the case. Whether it be people in the past have been trying to protect me. But yeah, Ross was just kind of like, I trust you, you be you.
Is that why there's been so many car promos in recent years?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few. The
Vanoot.
The Vanoot.
The DeLorean.
The DeLorean. And there was one where I bought a spaceship, but it never got off the ground.
And those are just your ideas?
Yeah.
Not running it past management, just I've bought a car and this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Figure it out later.
Ross has said to me a few times, no more fucking cars, all right? Because we always buy shit boxes, so they cause a bit of a headache for the company, but it's been awesome.
We asked Clint about what it's like working with you and sort of what the secret sauce is and the dynamic of having a good co-host. This is what he said. He said, the worst thing you can have in a co-host is someone who gives you nothing. The best thing you can have in a co-host is someone you know you can throw them the ball and they'll do something with it before they give it back to you. It doesn't matter what it is, if it's right, wrong, funny, serious. You just want them to do something with it because that's the only way you can have a genuine interaction. Entertaining interaction, otherwise it's platitudes and it's nursing the conversation along. I've never felt like her and I have done that. Even if we're talking about shit we don't really know about, we'll try and talk about it genuinely. She's definitely one of a kind as far as the spark of the entertainment value that she'll bring to it. You can always see her brain is working to go, how do I make this thing entertaining? How do I make it relatable? How do I make it funny or at least interesting, which not everybody does. She has an energy and a mind for it. It's a strange skill radio because it has to be entertaining, but it has to be broadly and commercially palatable as well for us to be successful, and she gets that. She gets where the line is. Anybody can come in and say outrageous shit, but that's not the job. The job is to find the line and go as close to it or just over it as much as you can, and she's very good at it.
Oh, that's so nice. Clint and I don't really talk about stuff like that, so it's really lovely to hear his side and what he thinks.
That is the gold, right? Like the line, like playing with the line and what your demo is and what's expected and getting close.
Absolutely. If you're not dancing all over the line, going back and forth, you're not doing your job. And that's, I think, my favourite part of radio. It's the thrill. It's the thing that gets me up in the morning and still makes me excited to create radio is, dancing all over the line and sometimes, and people not ever knowing where it's going to go, so not being, I think, one note. So always keeping people guessing is my favourite thing, because that's entertainment, in my opinion, because it keeps it interesting, it keeps it fresh, and it keeps it fun.
Like getting on a plane to go to LA to hope to meet Channing Tatum.
Yeah. Look, some people in radio would say we should have, preempted it and had it organised, but that's not how our show works.
But you DM'd him.
I did, yeah. No, I didn't DM him until at last resort.
Oh.
The last resort when we were there, second last day in LA, and the team was like, you need to DM him because I don't think we're going to meet him. And I was like, it's going to be pretty disappointing for the audience.
So to contextualise that, how has this all come about and what's happened?
Yeah. So Channing Tatum followed me on fucking Instagram. How random is that?
Not really. There's 1.5 million other fuckers out there.
Mate, this was.
Do you just look for the blue ticks?
That's all. I just see who's got the blue tick. This was back when I was first starting. Like, I think I had 30,000 followers on Instagram, and I was kind of just first starting to build an audience. And I remember being like, oh, Channing Tatum? And then obviously there's fake accounts. So I was like, oh, who's this fake account? So I've clicked on it, had the blue tick, 12 million followers at the time. I was like, holy shit, it's the real one. And I was like, can't be real. Still didn't believe it. So I texted him, I DM'd him. It was just real casual. And I was like, Channing, what's up, mate? Like, legend. And he wrote back.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
We've all been there.
Channing.
So relatable.
Hey. Channing?
Hey-yo.
Chan? Just over the years. And he replied straight away. And, so it kind of has grown from there where we just turned, something small and just made a huge fucking big idea out of it where we were like, let's go to LA and see if we can hang out with him. It didn't pay off, but, that's life.
Storyline's almost better, eh?
Exactly.
You go all that way and you don't find them.
Exactly.
Keep them on the edge.
Keep them on the edge.
Keep the listeners on the edge.
It'll happen one day.
Okay, there's some other stories we're going to go after here. We've been fed these ones. So apparently you had a hand-to-boob encounter with Lorde.
Oh, shit. Oh, no. Yes, that is true. I would say I motorboated her hand with my boobs.
Oh.
Is how it happened.
The reverse boob touch.
Okay, so yeah.
She motorboated my hands with her
I don't think that's
boobs.
I don't
with
think
her
it's
hand.
a motorboat if you're using your hands. I don't want to be specific on it. I don't want to really get into the detail. But
True. Let me tell you the story and we'll get into the detail. But I am obsessed with Lorde, always have been obsessed. I remember when I first moved to New Zealand, the first thing I Googled when I touched down in Auckland was, where does Lorde live? Yeah. And I have since been banned from that property. So I'd been here for quite a few years and I was at a Broods concert actually at Town Hall and I was quite intoxicated at the time, having a great time, love Broods. And a friend of mine goes, oh my God, because we were standing at the back of the mosh pit because it gets way too hot for me in the middle of everyone. And we were standing at the back and a friend of mine nudges me and goes, Lorde standing behind us. And I was like, yeah, right, as if she would be here in amongst all us common folk. And I've turned around, I was like, holy fuck, it is her. And I was like, this is my opportunity. This is my opportunity to go meet her. Can you tell how chaotic I already am? I'm trying to think back to the moment. And then she's walked over because she has known the friend that was with her. So she had an in and I was kind of just this weird person standing next to her. And as I've walked up to her, I went, hi, Lorde. So I called her Lorde to start off with. Hi, Lorde, lovely to meet you. I've gone in to hug her because I'm a hugger. She's gone for the handshake. And at that point, I was too far in. So I've hugged her. Her hand is curled up in between my boobs. And then I shook her. What the fuck? What the hell?
Yeah.
Couldn't have been a more awkward
Can't
meeting.
recover from that.
And then I think I literally just stood there for 30 seconds and then walked away and was like, yep, you're going to remember that forever.
Any interactions with her since?
We interviewed her a couple of years later when she released Solar Power, and fucking Clint brought it up on air.
Oh, I bet he will.
And to make it worse, she goes, don't remember that.
Don't know who you are.
That even hurt more.
Another story we were fed, and a lot of stories are in the book, which didn't make the book, and I don't know whether you want to share it, but it's about Aunty Julie.
Oh, Aunty Julie, she's going to kill me. Do you know anything about this story? You know bits and pieces. Oh, shit. So.
Didn't need much prompting.
It's a great story.
Oh, it's a good yarn.
I'm just going to say it's an auntie of mine.
Oh, yeah, I can edit out Julie.
Julie. So she was married for a very long time. And I think she was in her maybe early 50s. She'd gotten out of that marriage and they were separated, and she was thrown back into the dating scene. And I remember her saying, because my mum's her twin sister, but they don't look alike. And I remember being there one day and she goes, I've got a date. She goes, I'm real nervous about it. Haven't dated anyone in a long time. And for some reason, we're all on the wines, the conversation. All we do is laugh in our family, like when we're together, and we had a few wines. And she goes, guys, what am I going to do about down here? Like, what's on trend? What's happening? What do I do about this situation? Shay is just nodding furiously. He's like, yeah. And I piped up and I said, I reckon just give it a nice trim, keep it tidy, and you're good to go. And she goes, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. Anyway, turns out she did do that, gave it a trim. It revealed some grey hairs that obviously she didn't want there. And it was like 10 minutes before the date and she's like, what the fuck am I going to do about this? What am I going to do? Rather than just get a pair of tweezers and pluck them out, no time for that. She gets a black magic marker and colours them in. Colours these hairs in. This is a dead set true story. I wish it wasn't. Anyway, she goes on the date. She goes, nothing's going to happen. First date, all good. Be fine. Anyway, something did happen. Let's just say the guy she was with rounded.
Deep sea diving, I was going to say.
Deep sea diving, rounded third. He went down, came back up looking like Freddie Mercury. So
what a move, eh? What a thought process.
Oh, my God. And she was like, what do I do here? And she just left it. She didn't say anything. He would have been like, what the fuck? Black magic, right?
Like a Sharpie.
Like a
kind of high.
Yeah, like a she'd been like, God, I feel high on life.
So in terms of the line, is that over? Is that something you like? Where does genuine question? Where does real life blur with what you're comfortable?
That's over the line, right? You can't talk about that.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously over the line.
Was it obvious? Have you changed the language?
No, I've talked about that on radio.
Oh, good. So it's open slather.
Yeah.
We just didn't out said Auntie's name.
Exactly. I think you just have to be. You have to be strategic about how you word things.
Yeah.
And that's a part of the fun, you know? Like if you're doing your job well, you can tell stories like that. And I'm pretty sure we posted that video. It's been one of our most watched videos ever for our radio show, which Auntie, don't insert name here, does not appreciate it. People at her work saw it.
What about the wedding party? Treasure that was left in the paddock.
Yeah, that was also talked about. That's also been another one of our most...
the photos in the book.
They didn't want to put it in the book. And I said, needs to be in the book.
Yeah, you got to put some
mean,
context around it.
How often do you see a 3-year-old walking around with a big black dili? You know, you just don't see it.
Not these days.
Not enough.
You don't see it enough. It's not represented enough. That was, oh my God, I remember my mum calling me. So essentially, long story short, I was one of the people that had to organise my sister's hens night, and I thought, how fun for an adult pass the parcel. So put in all these naughty things in the pass the parcel, and everyone's having fun, and my auntie's
Big parcel.
Big, mate, it was about 9 inches long. Big parcel. And my auntie Shirl was the one who won the big prize at the end, which was big black dildo. And it was the star of the night. Like, people were interviewing each other with it. You know, it was being carried everywhere like a child. And eventually, I don't know what happened to it. So I was like, oh, that was a lot of fun. And then when we were getting ready for my sister's wedding, I, out of the corner of my eye, saw it, and I was like, oh my God, it made it back to my sister's house. So I've started interviewing people on the wedding morning, you know, having fun, hitting mum in the face with it, you know, just all the good funs on it, you know, wholesome fun on a wedding morning. And then it somehow ended up at the wedding reception, and my cousin was throwing it around the dance floor and everyone's having a good time. And then no one really knew what happened to it. You know, it was a good night, and they kind of packed up the tent because it was in the backyard where my parents live and where my sister's house kind of is. And then like 4 years later, my sister's had her first baby, and he's, you know, 2.5, 3, however old he is. And my mum sends me this photo and she goes, look what Jonty found in the paddock today. And it's my 3-year-old nephew just holding this thing where it lay dormant for the last however many years. And my mum said, well, we didn't, you know, we couldn't give it to him because it didn't have any batteries in it. So I said to her, I was like, what do you do? You take it off him, do you? And she goes, nah, well, we just let him, you know. He doesn't know.
Hell of a way to find
it's
out.
So good.
Oh, my God.
All right, one last quick story before we're going to move into TV land. But and I'm not sure where in the timeline this fits, but you got 1,000 T-shirts made with your mum's picture on them and sold them out in a short span of time.
Yeah.
Does that speak to the brand that you and your mum have created?
Yeah, look, she God, she hates that one, eh? She
Does she hate a lot of them?
some I think she likes, and I can tell the ones where she really doesn't like when I gave out her phone number to 300,000 people. I don't know if she loved that one. She liked getting all the nice messages, I could tell, but the T-shirt one took a long time. It was quite a lot of planning because I needed to get the right face of her in the midst of doing an Brianna. So it's like, yeah. And then I've sent it off to some cartoon guy on Fiverr, that app, and I was like, can you create a cartoon with this face? And then he's come back, and then I've like got this T-shirt company to screen print 1,000 T-shirts, and I've told my mum about it, and she was like, nah, you're lying. And I opened the boot of my car, and it's just packed with T-shirts. And she goes, who the hell is going to buy these? And they sold out in like a week.
Amazing.
People loved it.
Yeah.
They loved it.
Does that make you think to go again? Like
yeah. I've been trying to think of what the next Mumma Die merch is going to be. Mm. And I've had a few ideas, maybe big black dildos.
Market for it.
There's a market.
All right, let's move you into TV land because you're killing it. Okay, you move over and radio's going great and you're established. But then how does it come? TV comes calling, you decide to audition for the role for Celebrity Treasure Island?
I have no idea how it came calling. And I know that'll really piss people off because there's a lot of people who have tried their whole life to get into TV. I remember hearing about Celebrity Treasure Island was getting rebooted, which I didn't know what that was because I didn't grow up in New Zealand. And people were really excited about it. And I remember Dean Buchanan, who was my boss at the time, pulls me into the office and he's like, I want to put you forward to be a contestant on Celebrity Treasure Island. And I said, without even knowing the show, and I was like, so is it a bunch of celebrities like Survivor and they're, you know, competing? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, I'm not a celebrity. I was like, I don't want to go on a show where people are saying it's Celebrity Treasure Island. And I was like, I've been here for 2 seconds. I was like, no one knows who the fuck I am. And he, without even skipping a beat, goes, yeah, that's a good point. And I was like, good. Okay, so we're on the same page. He goes, what if I can get you an audition as a host? And I was just kind of like, what? And he goes, I'll see if I can get you an audition. And I was like, okay, well, outside my comfort zone shouldn't be a bad thing. And he comes back to me and he said they're already finished auditioning, but he goes, I've managed because I know someone to get you a pity audition. He literally said to me, he goes, it's a pity audition. And I said, okay, great, even better. It takes all the pressure off me. I get to go have this experience and it's all good. And I remember I turned up because I'd just watched season 2 of Survivor and Matt Chisholm was hosting it and I just loved him. I just thought he was a bit of all right and I just loved how real he was and I just had this connection even though he had no idea who I was. And we'd interviewed him about Survivor New Zealand maybe 4 months before that and I just was like blushing the whole time and just telling him how amazing and cute he was and he was loving it. He thought I was taking the piss but I was like genuinely. And so when I turned up for this audition, as soon as I saw him, he's like, oh, g'day, mate. And we just had this instant chemistry. Like he's a boy from the country, I'm a girl from the country, and we just it just worked straight away. And so we get in there for this audition where they fully film it. So they film it and you have to act out challenges and stuff. And we just worked together. And I was bantering and making fun of him and he was throwing it back and just laughing at all my jokes, which I appreciated from him, even when they weren't funny. And I remember getting a call from Dean who this was maybe 2 weeks after and he goes, oh, remember that audition? I said, yeah, the pity audition. He goes, you got it. And I said, what? He goes, you got it. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I said, it was a pity audition. And they said they loved you. They loved your chemistry with, Matt and they think you're the right pick. And then I just went into full meltdown, anxious mode where I was like, they know I've never done TV before, right? How am I going to manage to do this? And I literally went into it completely blind. I'd never seen the show before, never done TV, and it was absolutely terrifying. Yeah. And here we are 6 seasons later.
So how did you cope? What was the...
I didn't. I didn't. I remember having a full meltdown the night before I had to fly out to Fiji because that's where we filmed the first season. And I remember the only thing that really got me through was everyone on the crew was so lovely and so supportive, including Matt. Matt was a huge support for me because I think as a fellow mental health sufferer and someone who has a lot of anxiety, I remember on the first day when we were learning our lines and I said to him, I was like, I feel real anxious and nervous. And he goes, same. And I remember him and I, after that, we were just connected at the hip and we just would sit there and throw our lines back and forth and he got me through for sure.
And so how's it now? Do you still have anxiety when the new season is filmed?
Absolutely. Yeah. Every season, the day before, my girlfriend's always like, here we go, it's Celebrity Treasure Island meltdown day. When I'm packing and I'm like, I can't do this. I'm like, this isn't for me. And then once I get there and find my groove and, it's all good, but there's always self-doubt, always, no matter what. No matter if I've done, this was my 6th season, still had that same self-doubt. And it continues on during the shoot as well. I'll go through ups and downs and where, it's a constant battle, I think.
Without letting too much in, what's the time frame of taking you out of your everyday life to live in this artificial bubble of CTI land? It's
normally a 3.5 week window where there's no days off. So you just work for 3.5 weeks straight. And the days are pretty brutal. I'm up at 5:30, hair and makeup, catching a boat, wading through water, putting my shoes back on, filming a challenge.
Get in here, you lot.
Get in here, you lot. And then, doing filming, and then getting back, cooking myself dinner and then learning lines for 3 hours for the next day. And that's kind of my whole world for 3.5 weeks. But I always feel proud of it at the end. I always have such an amazing time. And you build these relationships and bonds with people that I feel like are quite rare because you're thrown into, like you said, Shay, this bubble where it feels like it's the only thing that exists.
And you get rewarded for it. New Zealand TV Personality of the Year in 2022. Is this another one of those pinch me moments? Like you've come over, you're hosting a radio show, you're hosting a TV show, you're winning New Zealand's biggest award for it.
Mate, I'm just as shocked as you guys.
I'm not shocked because you're great.
Oh, thanks, Shay.
Like you are, genuinely.
But I was up against like real TV people.
Yeah,
Mick
Roberts.
Mick Roberts, Paddy Gower, people who...
Someone else.
I
can't remember the third
one. It was an amazing lineup of people. I just remember looking at it and going, oh, yeah, great to be nominated. How cool. And so much so that I just got I feel like I just say that I got trolleyed all the time. But
if the radio and podcast awards are it's on brand.
Exactly. But I feel like, when there's free alcohol, I do, I take advantage. And it was the last award of the night, one of the last awards. I'd gone to the bathroom because I was like, oh, yeah, having a good time. And my friend Cam Mansell was there with me, and he comes into the ladies' toilets because he's gotten word from someone else because it's about to happen. He's like, you need to go get her. And he's like, are you in here? And I was like, Cam? And he like dragged me back to the table. He's like, I think they're about to do your award. At the time, I was like, how the fuck would he know? But sit down, and then lo and behold, they announced this award, and I was just, I've never won an award. I've never won a radio award. I don't win awards.
Nah, they're not that big a deal.
I've heard you guys have won a few. So if you just want to let some of us have a turn. But yeah, so it was, I think it made it so much more special because it was voted on by the public, by people, and that's what truly matters to me. And that's what made it, truly amazing. And
But I've heard you still get surprised that people do come up to you and like recognize you and go, wow,
yeah,
here you are.
Yeah,
is that true?
Absolutely, all the time. Like I'm always like, oh, hey, and then I'm like, oh, that's right. They might have seen me do this or that.
That's right. I've got 1.5 million people following me.
Yeah, but I just love to yarn with people, and I love when if someone comes up to me and they want to chat and they're always so nice and so appreciative of something that I've done, and they've got enjoyment out of it. And I'm just kind of like, I love giving those people my time because without them, I don't have any of this.
Yeah.
But that's reflected praise, right? Like they're probably feeling the very same about you, that you are giving them your time every day. Day in, day out on the radio, you're accompanying them. You're on TV as well. Like they're pretty familiar, and you seem like a pretty good person.
Yeah, sometimes depends what day of the week you get me on. Yeah, I mean, people are lovely. Like, yeah, it's one of my favorite things, meeting people and having a yarn about whatever. Yeah. And I get that from my mother. God, she can talk underwater. You would know, Shay. You would know.
45 minutes, 2 questions. That's all I got. That's all I got.
Sounds like her.
So the other part of your story, which kind of helps explain why Bree, is the ADHD self-diagnosis or clinical diagnosis?
Both.
Both?
Both now.
Yeah. How has that changed? Has that changed anything, or has it just made you more aware of why you are like you are?
I feel like it has changed me for sure. It's quite a full-on process going through, and I know people who are going through that process right now might be listening to this. It takes a long time. And for people with ADHD to concentrate that long to get a diagnosis, most of the time people give up. But I remember when I first got told I got this diagnosis, it was almost like a grieving process that I went through of my old self. I know that sounds a bit weird, but you think of yourself as, a non-neurodivergent person, and then you get told, hey, you've had this your whole life. And I kind of grieved who I thought I used to be in that sense. And over a period of time, I've kind of looked back on my entire life and looked at it through a different lens, looked at it through the lens of, you had ADHD or you're neurodivergent, so that's why you were the way you were, or that's why you handled that situation in this way. And I feel like it's made me be able to be a lot kinder to myself in a lot of ways and understand myself as a person a lot more, which has been super helpful in a lot of ways to realize that, if this isn't working, then I need to find a different avenue to make it easier for myself and how my brain is wired. And now I just look at it like it's the source of all my superpowers and my creativity and all these good things about me. And obviously there's frustrating things as well, but the good things outweigh the bad almost.
Do you wish you had known earlier?
Absolutely, for sure. And my mum feels a little bit of mum guilt around it as well, where she feels like she didn't do her job. But I was like, it's not your fault, Mum. Like there was no girls getting diagnosed. There's no research still to this day around females and how it presents itself in females. And I feel like us females get really good at masking. Like we can mask and adapt in certain situations. So it makes it a lot harder to identify certain behaviors and things because we just get so good at masking things.
You said something just before which kind of piqued my interest, but have you in the past been really hard on yourself? And is that softening now?
Always have been super hard on myself. Even my mum says when I was a kid, like always really hard on myself. I'm a bit of a perfectionist and I want things. And like I was saying much earlier, if I'm not giving 110%, then I'm really hard on myself and I blame myself. And I'm like, this is because you didn't put in the work. This is because you didn't give everything you had. And so, yeah, I've always been really hard on myself when it's not perfect, but it's definitely made me soften in terms of that. I still go back and forth, but I think I just think about it a bit more now where I'm like, not everything can be perfect. You know, you can't always give 110. You can give 100, but maybe not always 110, and that's all right.
We're not going to keep you much longer, but this next section is called Questions from the Contacts. So everyone we spoke to, we said, what's a question we should ask Bree? So There's 5 of them here, so give them as much or as little as you want. Question 1. You've found so much success from taking risks and opportunities. As someone who is quite risk adverse and doesn't like change, how did you overcome that?
Whoa, that's such a good question. I feel like I know who this is from. Yeah, I'm such a risk adverse person. I feel like.
Is it adverse or averse?
Averse? Adverse. That's a great question.
Yeah, without hijacking the question.
No, you hijack it. What do we think?
Averse.
I think it is averse. I think it is averse.
Adverse. Did I say adverse?
Well, it's written adverse, so whoever gave us this question has written it wrong.
Sounds like me. I do that all the time where I think I know a word and someone will be like, are you saying that word right? But everyone knows what we mean. I think it's always a struggle for me. So I'm always someone, if it is a big decision and there is a lot of risk, I want to know everything. And I have to have time to think about all the different avenues and do my research and all that kind of thing. And hence why the New Zealand decision took 6 months. But I think what really has pushed me forward in taking those risks and making those big decisions is it's always the fear of regret. I'd regret way more not being able to take a risk and do something and put myself out there rather than taking the risk and it failing. So I'm always going to take the risk because the latter option is my biggest fear. Not knowing, not having the guts or the determination to try something and do it, you know?
Good answer. Strong start. Strong start, Bree.
Okay.
Can I skip ahead to one that piqued my attention?
Yeah, man, go for it. This is your podcast too, you know.
Growing up in a small rural town,
Yes.
which can sometimes be closed-minded, where did your sense of social justice come from?
Another good question. I've since learned that people with ADHD can have a really strong sense of justice. So I don't know if it comes partly from that. I think it comes from being in a community where I have faced discrimination or I've faced judgment. And so when you feel something like that personally, on a personal level, I just have this like I can't not say anything. I can't not stand up for someone if I see someone being treated poorly or something's not right. And I think it comes from a place of, yeah, I've felt it. So I know how it feels and I have to stand up for someone, I think. Yeah.
It just on that, there's one specific interview, right? Like back in Australia where you, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, but it was on the same-sex debate.
The plebiscite.
Yeah, and in the book you sort of said it was the most proud interview you've done because you sort of stuck to your position and you felt like you defended yourself well.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about it?
It was, I still remember her name. Her name was Lucy Wicks. Shout out. If she's listening, probably not. And she'd been so vocal during the campaign leading up to people having their say and having a vote. And the campaign for voting no was just so dark and there was so much slander towards, you know, a group of people who were already, you know, don't kick them when they're down kind of thing. And I just had enough and I was like, I'm going to give it to this woman. I'm going to put it to her, but in a calm, educated way, and just asked her these hard questions where I was like, are you married? And she was like, yeah, I am. And I was like, and how many people did you have to ask before you declared your love and devoted your life to the person you love? And she goes, no one. And I said, so why should gay people have to ask the entire country if it's okay if they marry the person they love? And she just had nothing to say. And I was kind of like, you know, you don't think about what your words of judgment and hatred do to young kids who are listening to these things. It's going to affect them forever. I was like, they're the people that I worry about in this country right now. You know, these are the people that will hear these things and never forget them. I was like, you don't think about those people. And she just had absolutely nothing to say. And the interview, I mean, obviously in radio normally goes for 4 or 5 minutes. This interview went for 12 minutes. And I just kept bashing this woman with questions, like in a calm way. And after the show, I walked out into reception and there was a bunch of people there. And it was people who had driven to the station after listening to this interview to say thank you. And that's never happened to me before in anything I've ever done in radio, and probably will never happen again. But the country, it was so heightened in the country at the time, and it was dividing people. And I just hugged all these people and they just were like, thank you for using your platform and your voice, and you have shown that there is support and there would be people listening right now that needed to hear that. And it was just, yeah, the most amazing thing ever.
Shit, that's so strong. Is there a future where you're doing more of that sort of hard-hitting journalism or questioning? And you're saying that, I'm like, holy shit, like I would love to see that.
I feel like definitely with a strong sense of justice. I feel like there's definitely times where I'm like, oh, I'd love to get into, you know, some more serious stuff. But obviously, you know, at the moment, not
got a bit on.
Yeah, maybe got a bit on at the moment, but maybe in the future.
But do you think about next steps, and how far forward into your career are you thinking and planning?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't normally I try not to think too far ahead, but obviously we as people, we do think about it from time to time. At the moment, I think there's stuff that I want to do. I've always had things that I want to check off and do. So in terms of the future, I've got a checklist that I want to achieve for sure.
Because I guess naturally the question that most New Zealanders would ask would be like, is that future in Australia?
Oh, well, they didn't want me, Shay. No, I'm just kidding. My future, I mean, I've bought a house here. I've got a partner. We've got 2 dogs. I can't see it being in the future, but the only thing that would draw me back is my family and my parents. I've been so far away from them for nearly 10 years now. It would be the only thing that would draw me back, but in terms of right now, no.
All right. You're doing great. This one's a bit on the nose.
Okay.
What do you think are your best qualities?
Oh, yuck. Oh, no.
What a yucky question.
Yeah,
to
who
answer.
wrote that? They know me too well that this would make me uncomfortable. My best qualities. Probably my strong sense of justice. I do love that about myself. I think it gets me in trouble sometimes because I can't shut up and I just have to say something. But I like that quality about me because I feel like, I'm always going to fight for the underdog or the person that needs someone in their corner. Oh, God, something else. I am a pretty hard worker. I think that's a nice quality.
That's good.
I'll save you. I'll save you from trying to reach for anything.
Okay.
And this is, do you ever stop and think about what would happen if you saw the 3-year contract in Australia out and didn't come to New Zealand? What your life would look like?
I do think about that. I think about that a lot, actually. Because my co-host, Gaundy, who I love and respect, he's a really good mate of mine, I had to leave him on the Central Coast. Like, our show got broken up at that point. And he then did those 3 years because we got offered this contract at the same time. And he continued to do that show for 3 years, and just like Jace Hawkins told me, didn't get offered anything else. And then he went traveling and isn't in radio anymore. And I kind of look at his path and be like, maybe that's what would have happened to me as well. And I think it is a sad thing in Aussie radio, and it happens quite often, where there's definitely talent and people who deserve those bigger opportunities that never come. So, yeah, maybe I'll be doing what Gaundy's doing, working in real estate.
And then on the flip side, what's the best thing about the decision to come here?
The amazing experiences and people I've got to meet. Yeah, I feel like I've met some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life and have created friendships that will last forever. And have gotten opportunities that I would never have gotten back home, like to host a TV show, to work on a national drive show, to do other TV stuff, to perform in comedy shows, just all this stuff that I feel like I'm just so grateful for. Like, and I'm so aware, like even like when I step on set of Treasure Island, every time I'm like, fuck, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever that I still can't believe that I've gotten to do, and that would have never happened if I didn't move. And I would never have met my partner who I've got now, and that we'll have a future with.
I wanted to open the door for that.
Yes.
If you're able to tell us a little bit about Sapphire and what she brings to the relationship and how long you've been together, and I don't know, the parenting journeys in the book, if that's something you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, totally. Sapphire is the most amazing person I've ever met. She is everything I'm not, and all the, like, in such a good way. But then we're also so similar in a lot of ways. We have the same views on all the big important stuff, and that's really special and important for me to have, like, in a relationship, because I feel like, as I've said before, it's such a good base for where the relationship then goes. She's so much more organised than me, so much more calm. She's, for a lack of a better term, and not to sound corny, she's the calm amongst my storm, for sure. To create the perfect storm, really. Like, yeah, she brings so much to our relationship. And as I've touched on in the book, if we are ever lucky enough to become parents, she will be the reason, because she's the person who always leads the charge, and I kind of get dragged along and, for the ride. But yeah, she's truly amazing and just a special person. Like, what she does in her work reminds me all the time, gives me perspective on what is important in life. And because she's a nurse in the neonatal intensive care unit, and she still thinks I'm funny, which is nice.
You are.
Oh, thank you, mate.
So good.
Appreciate that.
Right, we've got two things to read out. I'm going to bring in Dean Buchanan first, and I'm going to throw to Shay.
Okay.
So I asked Dean, has Bree met the expectation? You know, you work so hard to get out. Has she met expectations, or has she exceeded them? And he said, I would say far exceeded expectations. Within probably a year to 18 months that Bree and Clint were rating higher in those key money market demos than the previous show and started to show really great potential. I was amazed at how quickly people sort of tuned into her style, which is quite unique. There's no one in New Zealand like her in terms of how she sees the world. I think people liked the funny, self-deprecating, I'm a disaster, you won't believe what I did style, and the relationship with her mother was huge. I think first and foremost, people went, I like her. And then as they learned, we've seen that turn into love, and that's what's changed the dial.
Oh,
It's nice from Dean.
he always says like stuff so beautifully. Like Dean's such a special person to me because he's been, I think, throughout my career, he's backed me from the start. His belief in what I'm capable of just exceeds anything that I ever thought, and it never wavers. He just believes in me wholeheartedly, and when I doubt myself, I call him because he just, I don't know, he just thinks I'm this, that, and the other, and I'm always like shocked. I'm like, how do you have this belief in me? He's like, because I know. And that's really special to hear him say that, and I'm very grateful that I met him.
Well, from one kind of special person to another, I think it's only fitting that we let Mumma die have the last word.
Okay.
Before she does, the book is incredible. It really is a massive piece of bravery, and I don't mean that in a glib way. I mean that as somebody who's picked it up and read it and can recognize the benefit that it will have to people, whoever they might be. And I've heard you say before, describe yourself as someone that was put on earth to help other people or to make other people feel it's okay to be themselves.
Yeah.
And the way that your mum articulated, I think, is the best way for it. And she said to me as we kind of concluded our 45-minute monologue, she said, and full disclosure, I'm in a real close to my mum vibe of my life at the moment. And yeah, it was a wonderful little afternoon just chatting to her. So her words are, a lot of people say to me, you must be so proud of her and what she's doing and all the rest of it. And I am. Don't get me wrong. I'm absolutely so astounded of what she does and the workload that she does. But she would have to be one of the most kindest, genuine people that you would come across. And I'm probably actually more proud of that.
Boy, you're going to make me cry. Damn it. It's the end.
The end.
It's the end of the podcast. Yeah. Oh, that's so nice to hear. I think she sums it up really well. I think it's not to be super grim, but the thing I'd want to be remembered for the most is that I was kind to other people and I made them laugh. If that's how people remember me above everything else, then I will have succeeded.
Bree, I'm so excited for, by the time this goes out, the book will be available. Get it at all good publishers. But yeah, I know what's coming for you, and it's so good. Like can't recommend it highly enough. Go and read the book, and thanks for joining us Between Two Beers.
Guys, I just want to say this has been the most amazing experience for me today. And I want to thank you guys for the work that you do. Like, for people who listen to this podcast, I've been in this industry a long time, and the both of you are so special. The amount of time and effort you put into what you do, I just appreciate so much, and I think is so rare, and hence why you're having the success that you're having. But I think also it comes down to the type of people you are. And I always go through life saying, not everyone is my people. Doesn't mean they're bad people. They're just not my people. As soon as I met you guys, I was like, oh, they're my people, and I just really appreciate the time and effort that's gone into today and everything that you do. And I just think you're real special. So thank you so much for having me.
So nice.
That's
Cheers,
very
Bree.
kind. Thank you.